So welcome to Impact RNC 2024. This is part of our Decision Wisconsin coverage on 620 WTMJ presented by Pasternak and Zergabel. We would like to welcome you to our live podcasting recording with 4 of our hosts of our news programs so that you can learn a little bit more about how we are planning for the eyes to be on Wisconsin. Today on our panel, host of Wisconsin's Morning News, Vince Vitrano, host of Wisconsin's Afternoon News, John Mercure, host of the Political Power Hour, Steve Scaffidi, and host of Spanning the State, Kristin Brey. So for the panel, the questions will be directed to all of you unless someone indicates specifically they have a question for you. So to get us started, the eyes of the political world will be on Wisconsin in the next week. How are you as journalists and hosts preparing to cover the RNC?
You want to start in the morning?
We can start in the morning.
We'll start in the morning. Thank you all for coming today. And I think my answer is going to be a little bit different than my teammates up here. As Wisconsin's Morning News, Eric Bilstead is our co-host in the morning. Greg Pancake Hill produces the program, for those of you who know and listen. And we've already begun talking about what is our job. And it's a little bit different, I think, than some of the other shows through the day. We're the morning show, so with regard to the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, it's the biggest story going this week and into next. However, as the morning show, we also think we're where a lot of folks start their day. And to be honest, as interested as folks may be, particularly even outside of Milwaukee County, in terms of how this is going to affect their day-to-day lives, maybe not that much. I think people are interested. I think they want to know. So we've talked about, for the morning show, really balancing what are the big stories. We obviously will have a procedure in place where we're going to focus on who was the big headliner Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night. Obviously, it'll be former President Trump. How do we bring that forward? Because not everybody's going to sit there and watch that and have access to it. How also do we tell the stories that are unique to Wisconsin and our experience? But also, for the morning show, we're going to mix in a lot of regular old news because we still need to get people what they need to start their day. So that's kind of our lens on the RNC. We are going to be on site like all of our shows. So we'll have access to those newsmakers who are up early. We start our show at 6 a.m., so it's 7 a.m. already East Coast time. So we'll be set to go. I think there'll be a lot of people awake and up and ready to join us on the show. But our lens is still to give you your regular old news show, just with an enhanced look at the RNC.
So the number one way we're preparing is we're sleeping this week because we won't be next week. So we're trying to make sure we're hydrating and sleeping. That's pretty much it. We have a big meeting actually today, my team. So I co-host a show with Julia Fellow, and we have a brand new producer who I'm super excited about. He actually used to produce for Scaffidi. He's a great guy. He starts today. So we said, all right, you have one day today, then it's into the fire. So today we have a big meeting, and we are going over who all of our regular guests will be. We're going to have guests that you hear on our radio sometimes that will join us every day during the convention. We're hoping some of the big guests that you hear sometimes on the afternoon show, like Major Garrett, CBS's chief Washington correspondent, will join us live here. So we're trying to nail all that sort of stuff down. But basically, it's just strategizing, but it's a real interesting combination because it's booking guests so that we know the show is full. We always refer to the show in the afternoon as the beast, and we say the beast is always hungry. So it's feeding the beast every day and making sure we have stuff lined up. But we also want to leave open holes in the show so that we're free to grab this interesting person or that interesting person that we see the week of the convention. So this phrase has become popular, being comfortable, being uncomfortable. And we need to be comfortable enough and confident enough to know that if the show's not booked, there will be interesting people, guests, celebrities, politicians walking around that we can grab and fill the show. Because the instinct is that we want to fill the whole show. I have a sheet of paper every day that lists every segment in the show, and I want that sheet full before the show starts because it's less stressful. But we're preparing this week by realizing the sheet doesn't have to be filled out every single day.
And for me, this is sort of a week to bust the format, right? I have regular guests that come on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, journalists, advocacy journalists, legal experts. This is an opportunity, first off, and two, this is the center of the political world, and last time I checked, my show is called the Political Power Hour, so this is that moment to get the big guests while still bringing in the Joe Zapeckis, the Bill McCoshens. Joe's hosting my show today while I'm here. I think this is a really good opportunity to discover what Milwaukee's about in the world of politics, right? So all of this stuff is happening. We've got the Donald Trump story. We've got the Joe Biden too old story. We've got everything else swirling around that. Can we bring guests and the excitement of being here to our show every day? And as John said, this is not like just your show. You're trying to chase down people for maybe a quick interview away from the show, bring it to the show the next day. This is one of those opportunity moments that I've been waiting. I've never covered a convention. This is a new thing for me, but I certainly love talking about politics, and I certainly love the city of Milwaukee. This is a moment to combine those two things that I love in the most fascinating, cool hour that we can do on the radio. And the other cool thing about this is more people will probably be listening next week. And that's an opportunity as well, not just for the listeners, partners, future partners, and everybody else that tunes into what I still think is the best radio station in the state.
It's always fun going last because you get to like think about what your answer as everyone else is answering. So spanning the state, we try to tell stories from across the state. I would say more than any of the other shows, we have the freedom to be a little more evergreen in some of the stories we want to tell. And I think this week next week will be an interesting challenge for my co-host and I, because it's not always overtly political. And so how do we keep our show being our show, but also recognize that we have this unbelievable opportunity to be live where a lot of people are not allowed to be, right? Being credentialed. So the ability to, the sights, the sounds, who we're seeing, and really painting the picture of what it's like to be inside of this area that only some people get to be part of. And so I think a lot of the pre-recorded interviews or phone interviews, we still want to be able to plan those ahead of time. But to echo what John said, as far as having the flexibility and the impromptu-ness of being able to grab people and just have a conversation and have that access is what makes it unique to be there. And I think my co-host and I both also have a comedy background, so we're working very hard to get someone from The Daily Show on. So that's the one I'm most excited about.
There should be a lot of comedy opportunities, I would imagine.
Typically, yes.
Do I have the opportunity for rebuttal since I went first? Is this
Go
like
ahead.
in legal terms?
Go
No.
ahead.
But I think to their points as well, the other thing that we're focused on is I'm born and raised here, born in the city, grew up in Wauwatosa. Like, I'm so excited for our city, for our county, for our state, for this. And I want to make sure that we're not just doing the politics also. People are only so interested in that, but everybody is interested and affected by the larger story of one thing I love to do is when we have famous people or important people here in town, I want to know, what do you think? I'm hoping that they'll say nice stuff about us, but if they don't, I want to know what that is. So I'm really interested in the Milwaukee and the Wisconsin story outside of the politics. Is this event delivering on the promise of the DNC that was supposed to be, the promise of the RNC that all these people are going to come to town and they're going to love Milwaukee and they're going to want to come back? Well, let's see. And I would like answers to that question.
Well, that leads to one of the questions that was submitted is, what do you feel is going to be the economic impact to Milwaukee and to Wisconsin in general by having the RNC here?
I think it's a mixed bag, to be honest with you. I think we've all heard $200 million impact, and that number gets pulled out of the sky, and someone in a fancy office puts it in a spreadsheet, and, well, where is that? Is that really going to happen? Is a lot of that money going to law enforcement agencies and not our local businesses? We had on our show Gregory Leone, the owner of Amalinda Restaurant in town. He's terrified. He said, I have no reservations. RNC people have made no reservations with me, and local people are staying away from downtown. So I think it's a mixed bag. I think there is real economic impact, but I think we need to protect and watch out for and listen to the voices of our local businesses. I mean, Fox and Hounds and Mineshaft need people to fill those tables during RNC week like any other week. Gregory at Amalinda needs people that live in the area to go there and patronize them because the California delegation may not do that. So I think economic impact's a mixed bag.
I think that matches the political uncertainty as the economic uncertainty, right? So what I would caution Milwaukee businesses to look at this as an opportunity. Again, that same opportunity. You can make your business shine. People might want to go there. But this is more than Milwaukee. I already know that some Republicans are going to meet in places like Brookfield, north in Mequon, south, maybe even in Oak Creek, Franklin, and areas like that where they can maybe have a little more privacy, a little more opportunity to spread their wings. So this is not just a Milwaukee event. This is a southeastern Wisconsin, hell, all the way to Dane County. So I would caution businesses to think in that regard. Here's the cool part, though. They got to eat and drink somewhere. So eventually they have to settle, whether it's a booked event or just a flash mob party for the convention, we'll probably see a lot of that stuff.
I also think it'll be interesting to see, because I think beyond the $200 million economic impact, the other number that gets thrown out a lot is 50,000 people. And if it ends up actually being 50,000 people, like how many people are going to go through Mitchell that are flying in? Is it whether, because I have heard different corporate sponsors who typically donate to both the RNC and the DNC, because that's how it works, who are just pulling out of both this year. So like, I think the story that's here, and then next month in for the DNC, like, is this a weird year for these conventions because of a lack of enthusiasm, because of the economy? Like, is that 50,000 number what really shows up in Wisconsin?
There's 15,000 members of the media are going to be here. That's terrifying. 15,000 members of the media. That is really scary. They eat and drink a lot, though. They drink like they're on a deserted island every night. So that should help Melinda.
I think what's interesting, though, as well, and you and I both have covered, I don't know how many Super Bowls and Final Fours and things like that. When you have events that are based around a singular moment, like the Super Bowl or when we hosted the All-Star Game, you know, a lot of folks in town with nothing to do for several days, right? And they're just kind of free floaters. As fans who would go to the All-Star Game or whatever it was that one night, they might spend 3 days doing other stuff. Folks who are here for the convention, whether it's media or delegates or other people who are aligned with the party, they have stuff to do all day. So I feel like for those businesses that haven't booked official business, their walk-in might not be what they expected. I just look at my habits and yours when we were covering big events. Right. I got up in the morning. I went to the gas station and got a cup of coffee. We worked all day. When I covered the Super Bowl in Dallas, we ate at Cracker Barrel almost every day. Like, that was not the big – we didn't find
That's when
like
we were
a cool
feeling fancy.
restaurant.
We made it
Right.
to Cracker Barrel.
Right. So your time is so brokered and measured that I think a lot of these folks are going to stick to the hotel, restaurant, and the ballroom, or wherever the free junket is with XYZ sponsor or lobbyist group, and they'll hit all of those. So I'm a little bit more concerned for those businesses who say they don't have those official bookings, because I think that walk-in business may be tougher to materialize.
There's going to be lots of interesting people in town for the RNC. As you each think about your shows, who is the person or the people that you want to get? What is the big interview?
Well, the big interview is obviously Donald Trump.
Right.
I know that's going to happen. I already can tell you that I have every Republican lawmaker wants to be on the show, and they don't want to schedule time. They just want to show up. So that's going to be a little bit of a juggling act for a 1-hour program. Jake Tapper, that's somebody that I've reached out to. There's some interest there. Many of the people that cover politics, they're all fair game. You know, whether they're going to be sitting in their hotel rooms at night, I don't know. But I'll chase them down to do an interview here at night or out on the street. I don't care. I'm not doing anything other than covering the convention. My wife's out of town, so I can basically just work. It's
And you
perfect
used
for
to
me.
be the mayor of Oak Creek.
I
You should
did.
be able to land all these
Thank-
people.
Thank you for mentioning that.
I think I'm interested, maybe it's because of what we do for a living, and a lot of the media people that we see on TV and hear all the time, like Steve mentioned Jake Tapper. I think that would be really interesting. We're trying to decide right now the balance between all the Democrats are going to also want to be on the shows, and they're going to want to blast what's happening in Fiserv Forum. So do we have an obligation to have them on the show? And as a journalist, what weight do we give them? Because I don't think there's a lot of value and having a Democrat come on the show and just blow up what's happening in our city from a policy standpoint. So it's trying to work that balance, because then a month later, we're doing our show one day from the Democratic National Convention. And so then how do we handle that? And do we let Ron Johnson and others come on the show to blast what's happening in Chicago? So it's going to be a real interesting balance, and I don't know what the right answer is. I guess Tiff, our news director, will help with that. But it's going to be fascinating. There's not going to be enough airtime. We're all nervous right now about how we fill the show, but I think once Monday gets here, I'm going to be begging to do a 6-hour show instead of a 3-hour show, because there just won't be enough time.
I want some of your time.
We can probably negotiate that. Your wife's a good cook. You bring me some of that salsa or that sauce,
deal.
and I'll give you some time.
I think for me, I'm interested in as well like I alluded to earlier, the non-politicals. Are there any? And I'm so disappointed we didn't have the DNC in 20 in its full glory, because in terms of which party attracts like more of the celebrities, more of the
Yeah.
superstars. Obviously, for whatever reason, it's the DNC, so there would have been more of those types, whether it's musicians or Hollywood A-listers or whatever. But we'll definitely have our eyes out for those other people who can either talk politics or not, just talk about being here. I'm interested in those other folks who visit town.
I also have this idea. I want to interview, if I take an Uber to work every day, interviewing the Uber drivers. Because I feel like there's people, like service industry people, Uber drivers, who are going to be experienced, who maybe not be political whatsoever, but obviously are the first locals who are impacted the most by visitors, that I think they'll probably have some interesting stories to tell too.
So with all these people coming, let's talk logistics. What do you think it's going to be like with the city lockdown, with checkpoints, with all of that?
I'm worried about these damn bridges.
Yep.
Like that Kilbourne Bridge was out, and then you said it was down this morning. There's only, 5 ways to get into the city? So I'm already planning on, and I'm already here early enough, coming even earlier just to make sure that I can get in. I'm sure after day one it'll be, big deal. And if there's less people here, maybe it's not going to be as crazy as we think it is. But I'm a little worried about the logistics, but here's the bottom line. Once we get here, what's the Panther Arena? 3.5 blocks away or something? I can walk that in 5 minutes.
Can we sleep here? Can we
That's
sleep
my-
on these sofas?
Stole my joke.
Can I get a room at a No?
Yeah,
No?
I think once we're here, I don't want to leave. I think Steve raised an interesting point about taping interviews too, because I think from a logistics standpoint, walking around inside the security perimeter, I think the best opportunity to collect good content is going to be to tape it. It's going to be before the show starts, after the show ends, walking around and seeing people that we all know and grabbing them that way. I don't like to think about the logistics because I think it's going to be a nightmare.
But don't you think the best interviews might just walk by us at
Yes.
Panther Arena? I think that's,
Yes.
and then you got to somebody just grab them, or you just yell loud, and maybe you'll get your
Yeah.
attention.
Like at the Super Bowl. You guys are all familiar at the Super Bowl. They have Media Row, it's called. And was that what it's called, Vitrano? Radio Row. Thank you. And what they did was, when Vitrano and I covered the last Super Bowl, we had our spot on the row, and they would bring people to you. Apollo Anton Ono was pitching a cereal. He would come by. Sugar Ray Leonard had an energy drink, so he walked by. Peyton Manning was blah, blah, blah. And we have that similar kind of row here, so we're all hoping that those people kind of get filtered to us.
All I can think of is it the Robin Williams joke? Is that politicians should have to be like NASCAR drivers and wear who's their sponsor is? I'm just imagining politicians like branding someone and showing up on your show.
With all the patches?
Well, who do you want to get on the show? I mean, you're in the afternoon.
Well, I
They're
said
working.
we are gonna get a correspondent from the Daily Show. If we could get Jon Stewart, I mean that
That would
seems
be
like
awesome.
that's a pretty good get. But I don't know. I feel like we all are going after the same people. It's the same. It's like whoever you can get available that are the big media presence, the big politicians, the Ted Cruzes, the JD Vances, any of the potential VP nominees. I mean, I guess could be the biggest story that comes out, right? Is if Trump announces who his VP is going to be. So yeah.
On the logistics too, I think we're all gonna be okay. As I said, I'm a Milwaukee guy, and I'm predisposed to get really nervous about stuff like that. I think we're gonna be okay. I think most people will navigate everything all right. I'm still trying to gauge. We had another story this morning about the protesters, where they're going to be, the lawsuit that was filed. Look, I'm for the First Amendment. I believe in people's right on either side of the aisle here to have their peace. I don't know. I'm so exhausted of that story. They're going to be where they're going to be. They're going to march where they're going to march. They're going to have signs. They're going to do their thing. And I don't think, barring the unforeseen, that it's going to be some sort of disaster. We've done political conventions before. Granted, this is unlike a time that we've ever seen. That said, it'll be what it'll be here. It'll be what it'll be in Chicago. They'll find a place. They'll have their voice heard. And I think that's going to be, outside of the shouting ahead of time, that ultimately will prove to be a non-story.
I'm glad you brought that up, because if they decide to march wherever they're going to march, and they're saying, we're not going to be confined, then they need to arrest those people. If those people can't follow rules, and they already raised money, in case they're arrested. So I think that is going to be an issue. I think Omar Flores and others who say that they're going to march wherever they want to and they will not be restricted and be confined. No one more than us four up here believe in freedom of speech. That's how we make a living, but we also have to have some rules and some parameters. And I think you're right, we'll be okay. But if those people can't follow the rules, then they need to be taken out of the security zone and taken somewhere else.
Yeah, I have full confidence in public safety folks. They're highly trained. They've been training for this event, including out-of-state training. They're ready to show up, be ready for whatever presents itself. There's going to be so much presence. I can't.
4,500 cops are coming to Milwaukee from out of state.
It's not that big an area. I think we'll be okay. Maybe outside gets a little crazy. We'll see.
We know there's a lot of information about the way journalists cover things, especially political stuff. How do you respond to people who are worried that journalists can withhold their bias during an event like this?
Boy, it's kind of quiet up here. I think we're all trained to do that. I have an opinion about everything. But from 3 to 6, you're not going to hear me say Joe Biden should be president or Donald Trump should be president. I think it's what our obligation is. I think that, I'm more likely to give my opinion on whether I like white roses or red roses, but on the big things and the important things, I think we have an obligation to collect the information, disseminate it, put it out there, right and left, middle right, middle left, and then let you and our listeners decide. It's what we do, and we have an obligation to do that.
Everybody up here has a show, and the reason they have a show, in my opinion, is because they're storytellers, right? So telling the story of the RNC from whatever perspective, whatever life we've come from previously. I was an elected official, mayor of Oak Creek, as John likes to famously talk about. John, journalist, Vince, journalist. Kristin has done everything in a very short life. Hell, you're not even, 30?
I just had my 20th high school reunion, and it's
How
not
about
that short.
And you look like you could still be in high school, so that's a good thing. But we all these different backgrounds telling the same story. That's the cool thing about the day on WTMJ all the way through the night. We're going to be shaping what people are seeing and hearing in our own unique viewpoints. That's the fun part for all of us. And I think that's the opportunity that I'm looking forward to.
And I think that's true. I think there is, especially with radio, there is a balance between personality, and why I think people choose to listen to our shows is because of the hosts, and the balance of having your personality shine through while being fair. And it's a balancing act, right? Like there is, I would say, like Steve had a 3-hour opinion show and now is doing a different type of show. And so it's a different calculus of how you frame questions, what type of guests you ask, what type of guests you get. But that is our responsibility, right? Is to be as fair as possible, knowing that we all have different subjective views on the world.
Fair is such a good word, because when I talk to my team about how we conduct interviews, I want them all to be tough and fair. I want Ron Johnson to sweat about what we're going to ask him as much as Tammy Baldwin sweats about what we're going to ask her. And I think this is in the news, so we might as well talk about it real briefly. 2 radio interviewers were given questions by the Biden administration for interviews. And then those radio hosts used those questions and not any of their own questions. We would never do that. That is not a thing. That would never happen. That was completely inappropriate. We want to be fair but tough, and that's kind of our mantra, I know, in the afternoon. And Vitrano and I actually talk about this sort of stuff. We're such geeks. We talk about journalism and fairness and how we run our shows on a regular basis.
Well, I think part of that, too, is John and I both come from the TV world first, and the rules are, I don't want to say rules, but the guidelines are different. When I was anchoring the news on TMJ4, there was no opinion other than, I hope the Packers win the Super Bowl. But, outside of that, I took that very seriously. I wanted no one to have any indication of any sort of leaning, of any whatever. It was purely, here's what these guys say, here's what these folks say, up to you, okay, move on. There's a little bit more room now that I can share with you with the word that Kristin used. I endeavored to be fair, but if there's a bias there, I can now share that with you and say, here's what I think. You will always know where I'm coming from. And on, I think, all of our shows, which I value the direction that WTMJ has gone, you're always free to dissent. I want a big tent, and I want all opinions represented. If it's my opinion, you will know it's my opinion. I'll say, this is just my thought. And it's usually in terms of analysis. I'm like, John, I'm not going to pound the table and tell you who to vote for. You don't want to hear that from anybody anyway. But I might say, I think this over here, this is garbage, or I think this here over here, this is great. But you'll know when that's my opinion, and you can then decide, and you're also free to dissent. We'll bring all ideas there. That's one of the reasons I made the change from TV to radio, is that freedom to be honest with you about where I'm coming from. I would rather, it's easier for me to say, here's where I'm coming from, feel free to dissent, than to sit there and try to constantly suppress what you actually know and believe. We all see the world how we see the world. So let me just be straight with you. You know where I'm coming from, and if you disagree, please. The text line is open.
And I think since joining WTMJ this year, what I appreciate most, especially with the direction that WTMJ has gone, there is such a wide variety of viewpoints in our newsroom and on the content team that I think my opinions get challenged, and this is not on air, but behind the scenes, of how people approach a story, what Steve thinks about things. And so I think I'm constantly having to reassess my gut instinct on a story because I work with such a wide range of political beliefs, which I think is a really healthy newsroom.
That Biden interview story is fascinating because we all get pitches, right? And they suggest things, right? This goes so far beyond that. But who doesn't want to be in a chance to interview the President of the United States? You don't get that many. I've never interviewed a president. I've talked to presidents, never on the show. I had vice presidents on the show. I would have just said, look, thanks for the suggestions. We'll have you on at 9:15. I may see one of those questions that might be interesting, and then we're just going. And then the candidate themselves, make the best of it, buddy, because this is what we're going to ask you. And if they can't handle that, how in the hell are they going to be president of the United States? These are questions we're all asking. These are not science problems. They're not solving, the world's biggest issues when it comes to like climate change. We're just asking them questions about politics and leading the country. That's it.
I think that's interesting, too. Eric and I were talking about it this morning. I've never seen from a candidate on either side of the aisle a list of questions. We, on occasion, will get talking points, and I will even offer, I think it's fair of anyone we're interviewing, if they say, what do you want to talk about? I think that's fair of them to ask that so they can be prepared. And usually what I will prepare is not verbatim questions, but I'd like to talk about the economy, I'd like to talk about inflation, I'd like to talk about XYZ legislation or whatever. And I would submit that freely so they can prepare, and I don't think there's any problem with a back and forth there, so that's not odd, but it is odd to get a list of submitted questions. I've frankly never seen that.
I've never heard of that.
Nor would we agree to that.
Nope. So real story. There's a prominent politician in Wisconsin that for a year and a half we were trying to get on the afternoon show, and they would not come on the show. And finally, in talking to their people, they said, well, send us the questions you want to ask them. And I said, yeah, we don't do that. And they said, well, then he doesn't come on the show. And I said, we just don't do that. And I said, how about topics? So then we kind of agreed on topics, and then they came back and they said, we don't want to talk about the first topic or the third topic that you suggested. And we said, well, then they're not coming on the show. They don't get to decide. They want to decide the topic, then they talk to Craig Karmazin and get their own damn show. Because otherwise we get to decide. Finally, how it played out was I started to get really irritated, and we're all really competitive with each other, too. You guys should see how we're all trying to book the same guests all the time. It's kind of fun. And I was afraid Scaffidi was going to get this person. And so I was nervous. And so finally I told their person, I said, here's what's going to happen. They either come on the show or I'm going to go find them. We have their schedules, and I'm going to just pull them aside and ask them questions that way. So you get to decide. And then they came on the show eventually. But so we take that part of it really seriously. I know we're a little different than Kristin and Steve because you guys don't have the journalists. The shows are different. I am shocked. I'm genuinely shocked that the Biden administration sent questions to people on the radio, and then they read those very same questions. That's stunning.
It's nuts, but that's politics 2024.
And one of those people got fired. One of those two radio people got fired. The other one should also get fired.
Well, here's the other thing. More often than not, and the Biden case might be a little bit different, but more often than not, these folks do fine. They've been in politics for a long time. One of the great compliments I would get from either side of the aisle, I thought two people stand out in terms of who didn't mind getting tough questions. Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett and former Governor Scott Walker. Both of them I had a good relationship with. Both of them, I got done grilling the mayor on something one time. He was on the noon show. And of all places, Channel 4's noon show, you don't expect to get your hard topic. But he knew it was coming. I can't remember what it was. But he knew it was coming. And I hit him hard with a couple of things. And we got done. And he looked at me and goes, that was fair. Okay, we'll see you next time. And it was fine. And Governor Walker, he loved when you asked him hard questions because he had an answer for it. And it doesn't benefit any skilled politician to get up there and get a bunch of softball questions lobbed at him. you all and people who listen to our shows are counting on us to ask hard questions, even if that's somebody you support. You want to see your candidate, him or her, knock them out of the park. So take the tough question and do well with it. You ought to be skilled enough to do that. They usually do just fine. It's their people around them that are so protective, and they don't do them any favors.
So what happened with this politician I just told you the story about? It ends up that the politician did not even know this conversation was taking place. I could not get past the politician's gatekeeper. This person trying to protect the politician had no idea. So when I finally did the interview, I made it a comment afterwards to him like, hey, thank you for doing this. I know it's been a year and a half trying to get you on, and his mouth dropped open. Like, what are you talking about?
So speaking of tough questions, we may not know who yet will show up on your shows during the RNC, but what are some of the tough questions you want to ask of the people that may be coming by, whether they're politicians, delegates, media representatives? What would you want to know?
I think what will be really interesting is the platform that is supposed to get announced, the Republican platform, because in 2020 they did not have one. And this time they've said that they're going to announce one. I think a big narrative has been this looming Project 2025, which last week Donald Trump tried to distance himself from with a Truth Social post. And so I think understanding actual policy and where the Republican Party is going is a huge part of next week.
I did a thing, I think it was for Barrett last week, on a question I would ask President Trump, and mine was, have you ever privately or publicly acknowledged that you lost the election in 2020? I would ask him the same question, because I'm curious about that. And I know that from written testimony in courts, he's actually sort of admitted that. But yet when you see the public Donald Trump, that's not the story you're getting. So that would be one question. I'm always interested in, when I talk to politicians, like, where is this story going? Like, whatever we're talking about, this, in the case of this week, last week, Joe Biden's age, senility, where is this story going? And if you're somebody that's a Republican covering this convention, is that the main attack position for Republicans, is the age of Joe Biden, or is it something else? There's a lot of silence right now from the Republicans. I don't think Donald Trump's done a public appearance in over a week. That's good strategy, but you can't maintain that when you're running for president. So that's a question. Where is he? He's obviously going to be front and center at the debate. Or the convention. He's actually said, I don't know if this is going to happen or not, he wouldn't mind speaking every night of the convention.
Right.
That's never been done as far as I know. But it's Donald Trump. A lot of things have never been done before.
I get conflicted because I want to ask the questions like, tell me why character matters, or give me your 4 points on immigration and how you change it. And we'll ask those questions, but I really want to ask, like, you're at State Fair. You have enough money for either a Miller Lite or a cream puff. Which are you buying? You're on a deserted island. What flavor ice cream are you taking? Because that's the only flavor you can eat the rest of your life. So I get conflicted because we've been trying to get Trump on the show too. And where we are with him right now is his people said, if you get him, you'll have 3 or 4 questions. So we've been strategizing. I've spent more time thinking about 3 or 4 questions. And are they all 3 or 4 tough questions? Or do we want to ask Donald Trump, do you put mustard on your hot dog? Because he's not going to answer the other 3, so maybe the 4th one is more interesting. And it's just a kind of fun exercise. I'm driving my wife nuts because this is what I talk about constantly. But
Isn't he a ketchup guy?
yeah, and he's a McDonald's guy. I don't think he likes hot dogs.
I'm interested in some of the behind-the-scenes folks who have either worked with the former president, whether it's Reince Priebus. And I haven't had a chance to talk to Reince Priebus since everything, right? I would love to ask him about the inner workings of the Trump White House and get them on record. I mean, there's some, regardless of whether or not you support former President Trump or even ultimately the policies that he had, there's no question that he was running a chaotic White House. And some of his closest people, Reince Priebus, his chief of staff, if you believe what you read, and I believe Bob Woodward and a number of the books were, this was chaos, like no way to run a business, no way to run an office. Ultimately, you can say, well, it worked out okay. Okay, fine. But what can we expect from this coming Trump presidency? Has he learned something if, in fact, he wins this election? Will it be different, or will it be every bit as chaotic? I'm interested in that. And from some of these folks, like Steve mentioned, could he possibly speak every night of the convention? I'm interested for some of these people that we don't see or know, the old people who worked behind the scenes building out, like Kristin mentioned, the planks of the platform and all this wonky stuff. I'm interested to know from them, why'd you stick with former President Trump? Because you have no role. Like, didn't you want your party back? Didn't you want to be important again? Didn't you want to have a voice? Because all that happens now for the GOP moving forward, at least until the election, is whatever he says. And again, if you're a huge Donald Trump fan, you love that. That's great. But all of these party bosses and some of the other folks who've long had a role to play in building out who is the GOP have no role or say or whatever. They're at the whims of whatever the former president says at any given moment. And that's been on display. Again, maybe you like that, maybe you don't. I'm just interested in these folks of why'd you double down on the guy who took all of that away from you? Don't you want to be important again?
The interesting thing about this convention from my perspective is this convention, even though it's RNC in Milwaukee, nominating Donald Trump could be more about Joe Biden than anything Republicans do or say, think about policy, or think about their nominee. That's sort of an interesting twist on politics. That's something that I'll be looking forward to hearing.
And think about the timing of this. The RNC is here next week. We could have next week that Joe Biden decides he's not running for president. How would that steal the thunder from Donald Trump and Republicans if Joe Biden decides on Tuesday or Wednesday next week that I'm out? Or also next week, a resolution may be brought in Washington to try to invoke the 25th Amendment to get rid of Biden. What if that happens next week when the RNC's here? It could end up the RNC is in Milwaukee, and it is the secondary story because of what's happening in our country.
Or it happens the week after, eliminating any chance for Trump and the Republican Party to talk about that or talk about whoever the next candidate's going to be at their convention.
It's really interesting to have such a big political spotlight in our city and for us to have an inside look to everything happening because, again, 50,000 people are going to be in this very controlled, tight zone. What are the stories you want to be able to tell from the inside that our fans and partners may not be able to experience because they're on the outside?
One of you guys mentioned it, Reince Priebus. The role of Reince, two people that I think had a big role to play in the Trump story. Reince Priebus, former Governor Scott Walker. I'd love to know their involvement, if they're willing to sit down. Reince is a little bit easier. Governor Walker's going to be really busy. He's doing a lot of national TV, but we hope to get him. He's been on my show many times, as he's been on the other shows. What their involvement was in that selection process, because there's this sort of illusion that voters pick the candidates. Well, my Republican strategist friends always remind me, the party picks them. You guys just sort of endorse that throughout the primary season. And I think that is the reality with the Donald Trump nomination. So what went into that? What's the mindset? Why, given all we know about that individual, 45th president, as Vince says, some people love him, some people hate him. Why was that the choice? When you had other options, I said on the show, I've been a Nikki Haley supporter for a long time. Why did you not choose that other option? What's the behind-the-scenes story of that? That would be what I want to talk about.
I think the only other thing is, again, back to my earlier point of I'd like to know what people inside that security perimeter, what their Milwaukee experience is outside of the politics and outside of the convention. I want to know where they ate dinner when Mark Cass, formerly of the Milwaukee Business Journal, and I were guests on Brett Baer's show on Fox. He invited us for a local perspective when the debate was here on Fox. And I couldn't stop talking to the staff about where did you stay, where did you eat, what did you see, what did you do, what did you like. All of those things I think are interested to all of us who live here. I just want to know for some of these folks who are in town, what's your Milwaukee story, what's it been, and are people been kind and friendly to you, and will you be back?
And that's a great way to make our city shine, too. I'm really interested in, like we just learned, Governor Youngkin from Virginia has rented out Mater's. I want to know, is he eating the schnitzel platter? I want to know, is he sitting at the table where JFK sat with the little plate on there? Are they only there because it's a block from Fiserv, or are they there because he really gets into German food? I want those sort of things.
You should
about
host
our
a
city.
food show. Yeah, you should.
Yeah.
No wonder you have the travel show on weekends.
The four of us could host a food show. Yeah. So I want those personal things as much as I want, how do you feel about immigration?
Yeah, I think all of the above. And I think, again, just painting the scene of what is happening and what it's like to be in there. Like, is there a lot? Does it feel crowded when you're just walking inside the zone? Does it feel like kind of a ghost town? Does it matter what time of day? What is, I think anyone who's gone to a Trump rally before, how many people are in full regalia of Trump stuff? How many people are in suits? Like, just kind of like what it looks like, because like have you guys covered a convention before? No. Yeah, so it's like I just have no idea what to expect once you're inside.
I want to know why a company decided to hang steel 1 week before the RNC. It's like, this is the week you chose to do that job?
Good question.
As we kind of wrap up our time together, the last question for all of you is, what are you most excited about with the RNC coming to town?
Showing off the city. I think we all have echoed that as far as I've only been back in Wisconsin for 4 years, and like I owe like my career and like I've had the love of my life. I have a child now. Like the last 4 years have been like the best 4 years of my life, and I attribute a lot of that to Milwaukee. And so I am very excited for Milwaukee to be shown off and shown off in a great light. I think we got a little bit of that with the finals in 2021. So I'm just excited to see the national or international reception of the city.
I'm not a journalist, but I'm really excited about the fact that our station, who really covers stories in a balanced way, fair way, in depth beyond what you hear on most radio stations, can cover this convention in the way that we're going to cover it. That's what I'm excited about. And I know the talent here, it's significant. From even Kristin in her short time and Vince and John with all their experience and me coming from an elected official background. There's a lot of different viewpoints that are coming together to cover one thing, which is the RNC. And how we can do that in a very unique way, which is the only station in town that does that, true covering of politics. That's what I'm looking forward to.
You know, one of the coolest things about working here, I think the coolest thing, is that I get to hang out with these guys, and that sounds so patronizing, but when you think about the collection of people that are in our building, and I walk by Kristin, who I tell her every day has the best hair, because she has the best hair in the building, and I overhear her and Brian prepping for their show, or I hear Steve excited about somebody he just had on his show. Vitrano and I talk all the time, strategy and brainstorming. So all of that is in the building, and I try not to take that for granted because it is so super cool. And so I'm excited about meeting other journalists and other influencers and other people that do what we do and hanging out with them on the air and off the air and showing them our city and walking down Wisconsin Avenue maybe to grab a cup of coffee with somebody who I don't do that because I'm in this building all the time, but we'll have the opportunity to do those sort of things.
And speaking of patronizing, I know this will also sound that, but I am excited for those of you who are our partners, who have invested in us as a radio station, who have invested in some of us individually through endorsements, and for your long-term and short-term support here around the RNC. I'm excited for you all to get a return on that investment. As Steve indicated, a lot of people are going to be listening to the radio station in this next couple of weeks, maybe some folks who wouldn't normally have been. And so I'm excited for you to get a return on that investment, and we appreciate your trust in us to do that. Additionally, to piggyback off of what Kristin said, I'm one of these clowns who I get goosebumps when we're on a national broadcast and they show a skyline shot. I'm like, ooh, look how the city looks. Ooh, look, it's the art museum. So I'm sorry, I'm gonna enjoy that, and I'm gonna hope and believe that Milwaukee is going to rise to this occasion, regardless of some of the antics that may or may not occur. I think we're going to do great, and I think a lot of people, you all have met people who aren't from here, but they visit, and they always say, boy, I wasn't expecting this. And don't you love that? Like, yeah, we're pretty awesome. So it's our opportunity to do that. I'm really excited to also be a host to people. Everybody we meet, everybody we see, all of us, like, hey, how are you? How's everything going? What do you need? Can I do something for you? I love playing that host, whether it's, an NBA Finals or big event, All-Star game with the Brewers, or one of the golf events we've had, or something like this. I can't wait to play host.
Decision Wisconsin, sponsored by Pasternak and Zergabel.
There they are right there, Frank and Jeff. Yes,
That's right.
We love our partners.
We would like to thank our panelists today, Kristin Brey, Steve Scaffidi, John Mercure, and Vince Vitrano for WTMJ. You've been listening to Inside the RNC, the Impact Breakfast. You can hear more about Decision Wisconsin and all of our coverage on air, online, and on demand. Decision Wisconsin is sponsored by Pasternak and Zergabel. Thank you so much.